we are going to create a branching scenario interaction in Storyline 360. We will be setting up a project where users visit 3 categories, answer questions, earn badges, and unlock the end screen once they've collected all 3 badges. So let's start with the introductory scene, which includes a title slide and a main menu. Now from the main menu, users can access 3 chapters and track how many badges they've earned. Each chapter follows the same structure: 1 multiple choice question, followed by 2 content slides. On the last slide of each chapter, clicking the next button will return the user to the main menu. The end screen is locked at first, so there are 2 things the user must do to activate the next button on the main menu and complete the training. The user must complete all 3 chapters, and the user must answer all 3 questions correctly to earn the 3 badges. Now let's focus on the functionality of the menu buttons. Each button has 3 states: normal, hover, and visited. However, instead of using the default visited state, I've customized it a bit. I have a custom state named vis, which will act as my visited state. Now, why did I do this exactly? Well, it's because the default visited state gets called right after I click on a button. Do you see that? This is something I don't want to happen. I want the button to turn green only when the corresponding chapter is fully completed, rather than being simply clicked. Next up, let's track when a chapter is completed. We'll create 3 Boolean variables, so a true-false variable for each chapter. It's important to give these variables a clear and descriptive name to avoid confusion later. I'm going to make sure that they have a default value of false. For each chapter, I'm going to go to the last slide and add a trigger to change the chapter's completion variable to true when the next button is clicked. Make sure that this trigger is positioned before the one that jumps to the main menu to ensure that the first thing it does is change the variable to true, and then it jumps to the main menu slide. If you do this the other way around, the variable will not change, since it will first jump to the slide and then it won't get the chance to actually change the variable to true. On my main menu slide here, I will add the triggers that check the completion status of each chapter when the timeline starts. If a chapter is complete, the corresponding button state will change to visited. Let's test it out and see if it works. I'm going slowly through all of the chapters, clicking next, going through the second one. I'm just testing if it works as intended when I press the back button. Click next. For this one, I'm going to go right until the end and just turn back to see that it doesn't just take it green, and it's perfect. Perfect. Now let's set up the badges. The user will earn a badge for correctly answering the question in each chapter. I'm going to start by creating 3 more Boolean variables, 1 for each badge. Again, use clear, descriptive names for these variables. And on the correct feedback layer of each question, I will add a trigger to set the corresponding badge variable to true when the timeline starts. And I'm going to replicate this for all of my questions. Then the final thing we need to do here is to set up how the badges are displayed on the main menu. So each badge has 2 states. I'm going to set up some triggers that on timeline start will check if the badge is 1, and if so, change the state of the badge to reflect that. I'm going to duplicate the triggers so that they cover all of the 3 badges. One annoying thing when you duplicate triggers like this is that it will change when the timeline starts on this slide with when timeline starts on my object, like it does here. So I need to be careful with that. Anyway, let's test it out. So I'm gonna access the first chapter, answered the first question correctly, and yeah, by now I should have won the badge. Just power through. It works, but there is something missing about this. We need to add some visual feedback when the user answers correctly to let them know that they won or didn't win the badge. So look at this. It looks much better now. So I'm gonna keep testing it, make sure everything works. It's very, very important that you test as you go to make sure that everything you've set in place works. And you can see that we get all the 3 badges. Now we need to work on changing the state of the next button. First, let's adjust the next button's default state to hidden. Then I'm gonna add a trigger here to change the state to normal once all the variables are true. Now you could also check if all the states are visited, or you could have 2 additional variables, one that checks when the chapters are all completed and one that checks when all the badges are won. Then change the state of the next button if both of those variables are true. This is a more modular approach. But for this example, I'm just gonna check if all my variables are true. It really depends on what you want and how your project is set up. Well, anyway, whichever way you choose, the next button will now appear only when all of my chapters have been completed and all of my badges won, which will allow the user to move on to the end screen. And there you have it. You've now set up a branching scenario where the users can navigate through chapters, earn badges, and unlock the end screen only after completing all tasks. This setup is really functional and easy to implement once you get the general hang of it. If you get overwhelmed by all the triggers here, you could actually create a new layer, place all the triggers on that layer. So I'm copying everything, pasting it here, and making sure that it runs when the timeline starts on this layer. And then I'm gonna delete them from here. Perfect. Then put a trigger on the base slide that will show the layer when the timeline starts. This is a great way to keep things nice and tidy, especially if you have other triggers, other animations playing on the menu slide. And that's it. I hope this proved useful to you, and thank you for watching.